Welcome to the Worldwise Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to building a truly borderless life. From entrepreneurship, investment migration, tax optimization, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Worldwise Wealth Podcast. In this episode, I sit down with Colin Plume, who is a leading expert in the precious metals industry with over 2 decades of experience helping investors grow and protect their wealth. As founder and CEO of Noble Gold Investments and My Digital Money, he specializes in guiding clients towards smart diversification through assets like gold, real estate, and cryptocurrency. In this episode, we talk about all of the above assets and more, as well as what is determining prices in the precious metals industry. So with that, let's dive into the episode. Colin, welcome to the Worldwise Wealth Podcast. I am very much so looking forward to diving in today. But before doing so, please share with us a little bit more about your background, your journey, your story, and how you have gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, born and raised in Los Angeles. Was someone that was around entrepreneurs my whole life. My father's an entrepreneur. My grandfather was in the garment business for many years and had a successful business. So got to see what that was and sort of gravitated towards that. I did do some schooling, but was terrible and failed miserably at school and sort of was looking for my path and ended up my first sort of career was in the insurance business, and I really think that a big part of my success has actually been the mentors that I've had in every genre of business that I've been in. So I had a mentor in the insurance business who's just very kind of tough guy to get to know, but somehow with clients he was like he could speak their language. He one on one very tough, confused. He'd get on a client call and he like they were laughing and smiling and he just had a beautiful way of doing customer service and connecting with people. And I watched him and I sat in the room and I listened to him. And then I left there and I got into commercial real estate. I had another mentor in the commercial real estate space, actually a gentleman that was younger than me by 5 years. I watched him build a huge business. He became a millionaire at 25 through commercial real estate and selling properties. And I just kind of watched and was around him and I learned from a lot of those people. And then I fell back into, I had a number of health issues. I've had both my hips replaced. I've had reconstructive surgery on my foot. I needed a desk job. So I had a friend that was in the gold business. And it's like, you'll just work behind a desk and you'll talk to people and you'll sell them gold. And I'm like, what is this? This is and I had gotten received, I received silver coins from my grandfather as a child. So I had a little bit of experience just in what I received. And so I just thought I'd work for this guy for a year, get healthy, and get back into commercial real estate. That's really what I thought was going to happen. And sure enough, I fell in love with the business. It was really natural. I loved the idea of gold being real money and silver. And I started to study it and I started to read all the books. And the creature from Jekyll Island and the Fed. And I just I really started to realize that what is money? What are we working towards? Is the thing that we're trying to work towards, is it actually going to help us get to the retirement and all the things that we want? And I came to the realization that working for money in that way is really it's not the best path. Unfortunately, you have to work to owning assets and building assets. And so I learned through that, through being in the business, working for this gentleman, and then he sort of lost interest. So I ended up starting my own business in 2016. And so we're almost coming up on our 10-year anniversary next year. And it's been a whirlwind. Started the business with a silent partner, me and him in a room that's like smaller than I'm in right now. And then we grew all the way to 48 employees. And we've done just up to date, we've done almost $3 billion in gold and silver transactions, buying and selling. So we've really catapulted, and a lot of it was like my early mentors and failures and all of those things kind of led me to where I am today. And now I own not only that business, but I have a cryptocurrency trading platform. I own a payroll and HR business, and then I have a fun hot sauce business too that I'm a partner in too. So I kind of branched out into other things as I saw some opportunities.
Interesting, very diverse. Okay, so going back to I think what sounds like the core business, you mentioned silver and gold. Can you dive into a little bit more of what that business actually entails? Is it paper trading? Is it vault storage? What does that look like?
Yeah. So what the business that I learned from the gentleman I worked for was that you sold bullion, coins, and bars, and so that's the business that I learned into from him, and that's the same style of business that I started. I did make some upgrades to how we do the business, and I had some ideas about how we could educate clients on the business because there's a lack of education in the space. It's a little bit of still the Wild West, the gold business, and so there's a lot of companies that will give out information that's false. So I really built it. I met with a PR company in 2016. They gave me like a branding idea, like you should brand it as an honest place, a family business, and giving people a lot of good information. And so that's what I've done since the whole time. It was great, unbelievable advice. And so yeah, we help people buy physical gold and silver. We can ship it to you. We can store it. We have segregated storage in Delaware and Texas, and we can store it for you there. Or we ship it to your doorstep if you want, which we've shipped. Out of the 3 billion we've sold, a little over 1 billion is actually shipped. So I've shipped over $1 billion in gold and silver through the mail. Obviously, you sign for it, and there's a system in place. But it's so that's the one way, and then the other way is you can do it in an IRA. In the U.S., you can actually put gold and silver and platinum and palladium in your retirement account. They started to allow it in 1987. Um, Really, they started to allow it because of a reaction to what happened in the early 80s when we had really heavy inflation. So people wanted a different investment. They wanted an alternative investment. They didn't want to have to all their money in the stock market. So they started to allow gold and silver, and a lot of people didn't even know you could do it. And it probably started to get popular in the early 2000s. So we have a whole IRA team, and so we help you roll over an old 401k or an IRA, and you can put all or a portion of that into gold and silver. It gets stored at the depository, so it's not leverage or paper. It's the real product. You're buying the real thing, and at retirement, you can either take possession of it. So once you're above 59 and a half, we can ship you some of the gold and silver, or you can liquidate it back into cash. So it's the last investment in the world that you kind of own by yourself. Because if you think about everything else that you own in investments, stocks, you're a shareholder, real estate. I mean, you do eventually own it, but you still have to pay taxes, and you still own it with the bank typically. Gold you can actually just own by yourself. Silver you can just own by yourself. So it's the last investment that you own, you can be in control of, and obviously it's done really well. Um, it's done really well over time, but it's done really well in the last 2 to 3 years.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for diving into that a little bit deeper. We do work with some partners for offshore storage, but I'm curious, it sounds like a lot of your clients are in the US, you yourself are in California. I'm curious, what are some rules, regulations around buying gold, taxation of gold? What does this look like specific to the US?
So there is tax in a few states on buying gold, but most of the states have moved away from tax um, on a purchase. Um, California, for instance, has a tax below a $2,000 purchase, but we don't do any transactions below 2,000. There's a few other states that have some tax, um, but for the most part, most don't. In the IRA, there's no tax because it's tax deferred. So that everything under the umbrella of the IRA is all tax deferred. Now, if you sell and then you go into cash and then you take the cash, of course you owe tax if you have a traditional IRA. If you have a Roth IRA, you don't. And then in terms of liquidation, if you have a gain, you're obligated to report any gain on any investment outside, and that's something that our clients just typically handle with their CPA.
Okay, perfect. Interesting. So I think gold, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like gold is usually the metal that most will think of when they're thinking of investing in a precious metal. But talk to me a little bit about silver. I know it's been breaking some new highs lately, and what some people don't typically realize about silver.
You're 100% right. So I've been in the business now for since 2008. So I've been in it for 17 years. When I started, it was 95% gold purchased from what my experience was. So yeah, you're 100%. It has shifted. Um, yeah, silver's and I sort of joke has always kind of been the redheaded stepchild of the precious metals. It just never got looked at as highly, and also I think that there was more of it out there, so it it wasn't as rare. But now that there's a shortage, it has become more rare. I think that was the thing that was elusive with silver for if you go back to the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, it wasn't as rare. And so it didn't move a lot. It was sitting in the $4 or $5 range for years and years. After it hit $50 an ounce in 1983, it dropped all the way down to like $5. And then it sat there until 2001. So, and part of it was because other investments were just much more attractive, I think, at that time. And during that time, because it was so affordable, there were so many industrial uses. So since 1983, and I talk about this in my book, Silver's a New Oil, there's more than 10,000 industrial uses that have come since 1983. So it's really become more of a heavy used industrial metal, and that has helped, the demand, and also getting out of that hump of it being like, what's silver, and also I sort of joke about it, but have you ever seen the study about the when the Olympics that the people that win the gold, and you look at the people that win the gold, and then you look at the people that look at the silver, and you look at the people that win the bronze? Have you seen this study? What like how they look? So the people who win the gold are obviously like ecstatic. The people that win the bronze are ecstatic. The people that win the silver are miserable because they were so close. They were like right there. The silver people, the bronze people are like, I can't even believe I'm on here. Half the time they're like jubilant. The gold people are like, I've hit the pinnacle. Silver, they're being second. No one wants to be second. So I think that silver's always been in that mindset where it's been kind of the second metal to gold, and it's sort of tracked that. But now it has broke its all time high of 50. It hit $53 an ounce 3 weeks ago. Um, but now, like when you look at it, you sort of realize like, wow, there's like not only is there jewelry, but there's solar panels, there's energy efficient vehicles, there's so much in medicine, silver paste and bandages that they use. They use silver. It's a great metal for that. And so I think now people are starting to realize they're starting to open up to it. And so, and I've made the argument that if you look at inflation, silver hit $50 in 1983. If you look at inflation, $50 from 1983 is actually $183 today. I would argue that that's the real all-time high. So until it hits $183, I would say it's still undervalued. And that's just, how the dollar works. I'm sure where you are, you're a perfect example of where inflation and how currencies, can and fluctuate pretty substantially in a quick amount of time. So, yeah, so I think silver's it's becoming more of a monetary metal, and there's been some pretty large purchases over the last like 60 days. Russia and Saudi Arabia actually bought silver for investment, which they've never done. They haven't done anything like that. So they are basically saying we're going to take some of our investment money and put it into silver. That's a telling statistic in the world that they obviously bought it for industry, but now it's an investment, and I think that's pretty exciting for silver buyers and silver bugs.
So you're mentioning, and I mean, I think it's probably the same for both silver and gold. I mean, there have been very recent all-time highs that have been hit. I know that very well. And what are some of the driving factors? I mean, you just mentioned one, but I'm sure there are some other driving factors behind these recent highs as well.
Yeah, I think for um, for gold and silver, part of as soon as President Trump got elected, gold and silver started to move because his strategy is more growth and spending and low taxation, which we're already in a pretty significant deficit. And so people know that he will do what it takes on the growth side. And the growth his growth strategy is spending. He's not cutting spending. Maybe he will. I hope he will. But at this point, it's not. It's not. There's no savings. We're spending $7 trillion a year as a country, and we're bringing in $5 trillion. So yeah, hopefully the tariffs pay us more and we make more, but we're still in a $2 trillion hole, and there's no sign of that changing. So if you look at the investment world, they're like, this is we're going to go on a rocket ship of spending, and the investment community was like, gold is where it's at. Also, there's been a general distrust of bonds uh, during that time period too. And if you've seen it, what the thing that's been interesting is the investment community that would basically say like you should have a portion of bonds. They're actually saying you should put that portion in gold. And from the Morgan Stanley CIO to, I mean, across the board, you're seeing the allocation that they're recommending has changed from bonds to gold. Maybe still a little bit of bonds, but like, so that's a massive amount of money that is putting into gold now. And they're telling their clients this has never happened. I mean, you're young, but when I started in the business, I've had multiple conversations with financial advisors that told their clients they put more than 1 or 2% into gold that they're fools. That was 16, 17 years ago. So for now, and then shift 16 years later, Morgan Stanley saying you should put 20%. So, and if you just amplify that over the globe, and the world is more infatuated with gold than we are, right? I mean, if you go in places, Thailand and all these places all over the world, they're lining up outside gold shops. There's videos online of them. So I think it's a mindset shift that gold is here to stay and that you should own it. And and I think a lot of these buyers are long term holders. They're not looking to flip. Now, in the last few weeks, there's been some profit taking, and those people make money in the short term too. But the majority are institutions that are buying gold, retail investors, central banks, and they're typically net holders and not net sellers of the metal.
Interesting. Interesting insight, that you mentioned as well. You see a lot more, and I'm sure you see this firsthand every day, a lot more retail investors coming in, and it sounds like just everyday citizens looking to buy gold. And you're right, we've all seen the photos in Australia and countries around the world of the lineups down the street to buy. I think it's mostly
Yep,
gold. You can correct me if I'm wrong if there's silver in there. But it's quite an interesting change, I think, from what you've probably seen in the industry.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the shops, so I don't know if it's always gold, but a lot of it's been gold jewelry. People like turning in their gold jewelry because it's hit at such a high number. Um, Unfortunately, what they find out is jewelry is just a terrible investment. But there's value there. I mean, it's when the community is selling 24 karat bars and coins, or mostly bars, and you turn in a 18 karat or a 14 karat,
Mm,
you learn pretty quick. And also, there's no regulation on pawn, right? So they could give you 40% below the spot price, and you could take it or not, right? I mean, so and that's the downside of thinking that that's an investment.
true.
Whereas if you're in bars, 24 karat bars, you're going to get pretty close to the spot price, pretty much at all times, sometimes above. But that has the perfect purity that everybody wants.
Mm.
So the demand is going to be higher, and you're going to do better in the long term in those types of things. And that's exactly what we sell. I mean, that's part of the secret sauce of Noble Gold has been that we don't sell a lot of different products. We actually mostly just sell bullion bars because it gets the person the most value, the most bang for your buck. And then when someone sells it back to us, we can just resell it. Whereas a lot of my competitors, they sell like hundreds of or maybe thousands of products. So they have to charge kind of a spread on both sides because they don't know how long they're going to hold it for. Whereas we basically sell between gold, silver, platinum, palladium, we basically sell probably 15 products. And so we always know when we get it back, we're going to flip it. So we don't have to charge a lot. We can buy it back at a good price and we turn it. And that's kind of been something that's really kind of sustained us over time. And also, when we run out, which there's shortages, and there will be more shortages, we typically don't run out because people are selling back products, and we just say, "Well, this is what we have. It's a good product. You should buy it. It's not a polar bear coin or it's not a Arctic monkey coin, but it's the things that everybody wants. It's the bullion bars that the banks want to buy." So that's how we help our clients kind of buy the right product, also. So it helps them get the best return.
I have so many questions I want to ask you, but I think next up I'm going to ask you. I see behind you there you have your book, Silver is the New Oil. So tell me a little bit about that. And do you see silver playing a similar role to what oil has been in coming decades?
Yeah, I look at I looked at the oil boom in the late 1800s, and it was like, holy cow! Once they figured out how to pull it out of the ground, and the wealth that was accumulated in a few families is still there. Like that, if you look at the Middle East and you look at, the late 1800s, there's like, there's wealth in, 5 to 7 families that has sustained their whole family for 120, 130 years. So I was like, could that happen with silver? And I do think that what will happen is that silver won't completely replace oil, but it is we are getting closer to potential peak oil. Some people believe we've already hit peak oil where the amount coming out of the ground is going to start dwindling down. So what's the next thing? What's the next thing that we're going to use? And so my hypothesis in the book is I go through a lot of the uses. I go through like the demand, and I make a parallel that it's just going to slowly start to replace, and it has in some ways. If you think about solar panels, like that idea that getting an energy cost that's more fixed for people is what people want and is what people need and what the world needs. And silver plays a part of that. Energy efficient vehicles, going away from gas powered cars, and I'm not saying get rid of your gas, all of your cars. Like I have a 1968 Pontiac GTO that's definitely takes some gas, and I love it, and it smells. But I also have an electric car because I want to balance it out, right? Like, so I think it's just going to kind of mirror some of the usage. Um, and then if you look at military, and then if you look at all the electronics, data centers, they all use silver. Um, Drones. So there's just a lot of uses that oil dominated that I think silver will start to chip away at. And I just when I started to think about silver and looked at the world, it's like, why is Saudi Arabia paying these soccer players hundreds of millions of dollars? Why are they doing? They know that oil, their next generations, like oil, we're gonna become less oil dependent. It's gonna shift, and the more that shifts, they have to diversify from the thing that made them so wealthy, and that's what they're doing. And so my theory is that silver will just continue to chip away over the next 100 years, and whoever's in silver will do well. And also, the amount of silver coins and bars that you can buy in investment is going to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink because if we have right now we have 148 million ounce shortage of silver. If industry needs it, they're going to pay the most. The military will pay the most. Everyone will pay them. Every industry that needs it will pay $10 above the spot price if necessary because they have to have it. So what are these coins and bars? Like, what are people going to do? Like, they're just the amount of these is going to shrink. And so I think people that hold these and pass them down, or maybe they sell them later on, they're going to do really well because I really think at some point they will not have coins and bars, new ones minted. I think they'll run out, and whoever's holding those will have an asset that will not be available anymore because industry will just swallow it up. Um, and I don't know how long that's going to take, but I think if you look at the chart of where it's going and just how much is available, that will eventually happen. And so anyone that's actually has silver coins and bars will profit from that situation. There just won't be enough available out there.
Interesting insight. I have to ask you as well. I don't believe it's a crypto fund, but you also do work with crypto investments in terms of the IRA. Is that correct?
It's not a fund. You actually buy, I'll just say Bitcoin, and
Okay.
We work with Equity Trust, which is one of the largest self-directed custodians, and they're a custodian. So what makes My Digital Money, which is my platform that we've partnered with them, is that we're the only company that the crypto is held in trust. Coinbase and other ones are trying to get there, but they're not. So the problem is if Coinbase, and they've said it, if something happens to them, there's no recourse for you. With a trust, all of the investments in Equity Trust are not owned by Equity Trust. They're owned by the trust. So we are by far the safest way to own crypto. And I thought that was a huge deal starting out. I still think it's a big deal. We've grown we've done really well. I think people are not as concerned that that's important, but I do think that will be important in the future. The people that buy from us understand that because, yeah, if any of these go insolvent or Binance or any kind of situation out there, you have no protection. The way ours is set up, all of the crypto is in that trust. So Equity Trust, all their business is separate. That is the safest form. So when I got into it, when they came to me and said, like, let's do this together, I said, tell me how it's set up. And I said, well, that for me as a crypto owner, that's what I want. I want to have the assets separate from the company because the company, and we saw so many go out of business. We had so many commingled funds, and we had so many. What was the one with the guy in the Bahamas? I can't even remember his name. The guy that went to
Mount
jail.
Gox, Celsius. There's lots.
But what was the kid, the one that paid off all the politicians? Anyways, I can't think of his name, but he commingled everything, right? He commingled all the money. So yeah, so we have it set up. You could do IRA, and also the second reason I got in is I was like, of course you have to do this in IRA because what the problem with everyone now is they don't want to sell because they don't want to pay the tax. So we have it set up so that all the tax reporting is done, and if you do it in the IRA, you don't pay the tax rate. Then you could sell Bitcoin at 100, go back into cash, buy it back, and you could do that 100 times. And if you're in a Roth IRA, you never pay tax. If you're in a traditional, then you would just pay, later. But the problem is that you can't take any profit on the table if you don't buy it in an IRA. And so ours is set up that you can buy it in an IRA. We've never had one client have any crypto stolen. We're the only firm to say that. So we've had no theft in 5 years. We have no risk of loss because it's in a trust, and you get tax advantages. So that's why I started it. And it's we do a lot of service. We answer the phone, so we do it a little bit different than the other guys. We're more service, like everything's set up here in the U.S. and we pick up the phone, and you're not talking to someone in India. So we just go heavier service, and really just focus on the safety of the client. That's how we built it.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing more details about that because it is such an issue with not your keys, not your coins, especially in some of these, I mean, bigger companies. Yes, you usually will hopefully trust some of them like a Binance or a Coinbase, but also you're very restricted. I don't know this firsthand, but you're very restricted in the US as well with certain coins that you can buy that are on these exchanges. So I'm sure
Yeah,
you probably follow those rules as well, but it is an interesting concept to hold it in a trust instead of just being reliant on the exchange itself.
yeah, yeah. That's always my big concern is what happens to the business, and because I got to think of the name of the one that where the guy went to jail, but basically I knew they were in trouble when they put their name on the arena of the Miami Heat, because that's the thing is like I know what it costs to acquire a client, and I can see these companies spending just billions of dollars on advertising, and I get it as long as they're profitable and it's great, but like if they're not, it could turn so quickly. If we see a crypto collapse, and I went through the downturn, and basically when the downturn happens, if crypto goes down 50, 60%, nobody's buying. And so all the money you spend on advertising to acquire a client goes to nothing. People do not buy when it drops. They only buy when it goes up. And I don't think that's a good thing, but that's the nature of it. And so if you have a very heavy staff overhead, you could just in within 6 months, you could lose enough money to put you out of business. And I've seen it happen. So that's the thing. We have no debt. We're very lean. We're in a position where we can go the upturn or the downturn, and that's how I built it. And we've been profitable since year two. and we just, we don't do too much on advertising because I just don't want to get caught in a situation where we're spending, $10 million a month and then the market turns and we're stuck. So we built it a lot through word of mouth, a little bit of advertising, and I think right now we have like, I don't know, 400 million under management. So it's not a huge platform, but it's good, and everybody knows that they'll be safe there, which I think is the most, because if you're taking this bold risk, like, then to lose it because the company did something wrong, it's terrible. So I just never wanted that situation to happen.
I love that integrity that you have. So, before you leave, tell us where we can find your platforms, but I'm also curious, you mentioned at the beginning some of the books that you have read. What are some of your book recommendations for these topics?
Um, the Creature from Jekyll Island is a big one. I think End the Fed by Ron Paul, short book, brilliant. He talks a lot about silver. He was the guy. He's the father of Rand Paul. He's famously was on the floor of Congress holding a silver coin, like, "This is money. You guys don't know what you're taught." Like, and he was way ahead of his time. I mean, this was like 30 years ago that he was doing this. So I think those two books are really the Creature from Jekyll Island is really fascinating. You learn about how the Federal Reserve was started, um, and that whole how that the banks are incorporated, and it's just basically run by the banks and these wealthy families, and everybody thinks it's part of the government, and it's not. And the Fed's good. It talks about money. Let me think of a few other ones. Obviously, my book, Silver's a New Oil, which, I would say that part of the reason I wrote it about silver is that there wasn't that many books just on silver. There was a lot of books on gold. There's a ton of books. So I thought, oh, let's just see what's going to happen with, doing a silver book. And we hit number one December last year. We number one in commodities on Amazon within like 2 days. And I think we're still in the top 20 there.
Congrats.
So yeah, it was good. It took 2 years. I had some help. But I thought it was a story. And then, and for anyone that is interested, I do talk about silver. I paint the argument, but in the end, I have the two chapters in the end. One of them I talk about platinum, which platinum's up 64% this year, and then I have a whole chapter on real estate, and I give people insight into what I think the new opportunities in real estate will be, and because I also own a tremendous amount of real estate, commercial real estate, and I have a lot of experience there. So I did one chapter on that. So if anybody, it's not just a silver book. There's a whole chapter on platinum and a whole chapter about real estate, and I give some insight into things that I do because as much as I'm in the gold and silver business, I have other assets because I want to be diversified too.
Mhm.
And that's why I
Definitely.
own these businesses because I really bought these two other businesses because I don't trust the dollar. I think I can do in a business that has good value and has good people and offers a good product, I can do better than keeping the money in the bank.
I was going to ask you, I think I need to ask you one more question, just a general overall question. What is your thoughts on the Federal Reserve and the traditional banking system?
I think it's they are only looking out for themselves. We've built a society that is, when Jerome Powell meets, we're so our economy is screwed up because whatever Jerome Powell says can fluctuate the economy so wildly, and he's the guy that dictates debt. That's what he does, right? In essence, he can dictate what money it costs to get money. That's how dependent we are on him and that position. That's when your economy is screwed up. And so I look at it and I follow it. And listen, it's important for my business to know what's going on there too. But when they come out and say, when he came out and basically said like that because they fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because they've been messing up the job reports for the past year, and I mean wildly screwed up statistics, and he tried to say that he didn't know, he was just basing it on what's going on, and they know what's going on. They know that our economy is not doing well. They know that the jobs are down, but they came out with these data points that made no sense. They still call people to ask them if they have jobs. It's part of it. They use payroll data and they actually call people. Can you imagine if you called somebody that didn't have a job? Of course they're going to say they have a job. Like, who wouldn't? If my wife's in the background, yeah, they're calling from the bureau. Yeah, I'm employed. I mean, this is like the same. They've been using this strategy to figure out what our unemployment is since the 1950s. With AI and everything that we have today, that they're still calling people to ask these things. It blows my mind that we're still using all these antiquated ways of getting data with the government. So I think that that's the scary thing, is that we are so living on, and the real estate market's living on it. I mean, if they're waiting desperately for rates to come down, because no one buying, no one's selling, no one's doing anything in real estate right now because they can't, based on rates. That's how screwed up. That's how we've become so dependent on cheap money. And that's how you know that our system is broken, is that after 9/11, we screwed up. We dropped rates, and we never, and Greenspan said, what real estate bubble? Shame on him. They should have lowered, once they pulled us out of that mess, they should have brought rates back up to a normal level, and we'd have more of a normal market today. But once we did, we got addicted to it. We got addicted to low rates, and they screwed everything up. And now we're gonna pay the price for it. And now we are paying the price because properties aren't moving, values are too high. I mean, everything that is a worst case scenario is because we didn't let the free market dictate what the price of the money should be. That's what we should always do. So yes, if rates should be 8%, they got to be 8%,
Mm-hmm.
but they should never be 3% for 20 years. And that's how we screwed ourselves up, and we're going to pay the price for it. And we're going to pay it probably for the next, I would say, at least 10 years. We're going to pay it. And then hopefully we wake up and we get our debt in order and we fix things, and we don't do this again. But I think what happens is there's a lot of money that gets made when you make money so cheap,
Mm-hmm.
because it allows people to fantasize and buy shit they don't need. Like, people are buying second houses and boats and things that they don't need because they could pull the money out of their house for 3%, and they thought this would go on forever, and it doesn't. And so my philosophy is that uh, we're too addicted to what the Fed does, and we're too addicted to debt. And until that changes, hard assets will rule the world. That's what I think.
Love that perspective. I'm looking forward to reading your book. Where can people find you and your businesses online?
Yeah, Noble Gold Investments is our precious metals company, so you can check us out there. We do offer live service. You can talk to a real person here in the U.S. My Digital Money, exactly the same. If you're into crypto, call us. We can set up your account. We do everything over the phone, or you can do it online. And then my book, Silver is a New Oil, is on Amazon. There's a PDF version that I think it's like 99 cents, or you can buy the copy here for like $14.
You've just listened to the Worldwise Wealth podcast. Visit our links in the show notes below or at worldwisecapital.com to learn more about how we can assist in your borderless diversification journey. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.